things the right way, not the easy way.
You got any brothers and sisters?
8 sisters, 7 of which are older than me.
Did they teach you anything?
They taught me that people matter a lot.
I'm talking to Ken Goodrich, owner of Gettle Air Conditioning and Plumbing.
The day I started my business, my first job was for a 90-year-old man whose air conditioner broke down on the hottest day of the year.
And
he didn't have any money to pay me.
that's awkward.
He was really embarrassed. So when he asked if I could take an old cello as payment, I told him I always wanted to learn to play the cello.
The what?
The cello. It's like a giant violin.
You talking about the thing standing in the corner of your office?
Yeah,
I didn't know you could play that.
I can't.
Then why did you take it?
I took it because he would probably have died if I hadn't fixed his air conditioner. I took it because people matter.
I like working here, Ken.
I like working here too, Jack.
Gettle, G-O-E-T-T-L.
Keep it cool, but it's hard to spell.
Discover matches all the cash back you earn on your credit card at the end of your first year. It's amazing because Discover is accepted at 99% of places in the U.S. that take credit cards. Learn more at discover.com/yeah. 2021 Nielsen Report limitations apply.
Being in the Army National Guard is about more than serving your country. It's about being there for your community when your neighbors need you most. The Army National Guard makes college affordable, and serving part-time can help you graduate debt-free. Do you want to stay close to friends and family? The Guard allows you to serve close to home. Serving part-time in the Army National Guard lets you have the life you want. Learn more by visiting nationalguard.com.
Sponsored by the California Army National Guard. Aired by the California Broadcasters Association and this station.
It is back. It is gone. A home run for Max Muncy.
There's no better weekend spent than one under the lights at Dodger Stadium. Be here Friday, September 10th through Sunday the 12th as the Dodgers host the San Diego Padres for a 3-game series. And stay after the game on Friday to enjoy Friday night fireworks presented by Q-Cell. Or for Kids Run the Bases on Sunday to close out the series. Score your seats today at Dodgers.com/tickets. Find the employees you need to get your business moving. Sign up with iHeartAdBuilder.com and create a custom radio ad to reach job seekers listening to stations just like this one. Get started today at iHeartAdBuilder.com.
Income-eligible renters impacted by COVID-19 can now get 100% of their past due rent and utility bills paid through the California COVID-19 Rent Relief Program. Landlords with tenants who haven't paid rent because of COVID-19 are eligible for 100% reimbursement too. The application is fast, your information is private, and you won't be asked about citizenship. Apply at housingiskey.com before eviction protections end on September 30th. Brought to you by the California Department of Housing and Community Development.
That's part of the tax. Pick up it quick and easy. You'll also get a vacation voucher and a tax deduction.
Also accepting real estate donations.
Wayne Resnick from KFI. No one knows you like you. That's why on iHeart you have your very own station for free. It's called My Favorites Radio, and it plays nothing but the songs that you've thumbed up and the biggest songs on the stations you listen to the most. All of it on one personalized station, and nobody else has it. The more you thumb up, the more personalized it gets. You can share your station with your friends, but I don't. I keep it all to myself. My Favorites Radio, only on the free iHeart app. #1 for music, radio, and podcasts. All in one app.
Good morning, everyone. This is KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. Don't forget that you can catch KFI everywhere and anytime on the iHeartRadio app. My name is Oscar Ramirez, and I'm the host of The Daily Dive, a daily news podcast covering some of the top stories making waves in the news. You can catch a new episode of The Daily Dive Monday to Friday on iHeartRadio, and it's ready for you when you wake up. Here on The Daily Dive Weekend Edition, I'll be bringing you some of the best stories I covered during the week. The evacuations in Afghanistan have been the biggest ongoing story of the week, and President Biden has condemned the ISIS-K suicide bombings in Kabul that killed at least 13 U.S. service members, over 60 Afghans, and injured many more. He also vowed to hunt them down and make them pay. We're also seeing the CIA and other troops conducting missions outside of Kabul to extract Americans before the August 31st deadline. For more on all of this, we'll speak to Jessica Denali, reporter at the Wall Street Journal and author of Eagle Down, the last Special Forces fighting the Forever War.
We are hearing that there were at least 2 blasts at one of the main gates for getting into the airport, one of the gates that has been the most crowded. The U.S. and other foreign nations have taken to bringing in people from different gates. And so it's not clear to me whether this gate was ever going to open, and unfortunately the people targeted were most likely some of the most vulnerable Afghans.
And even as the area was hit, there were still evacuations continuing throughout all of this. When we last heard from Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, he said there was around 1,500 American citizens that were waiting to be evacuated, and they've been in contact with all of them. That's what they said, but that's still a lot of people, obviously, as we hit that deadline. And recently you wrote an article talking about how the CIA and other U.S. troops were conducting these missions outside of the airport to help extract Americans and Afghan allies. How's that been going?
One of the biggest problems has been getting people into the airport. Once you get through the Taliban checkpoints, you have to then get through a checkpoint run by elite Afghan forces, and then you get through to the Marines. And so it's an incredibly difficult process where even if you are an Afghan with an approved visa, the Taliban might not let you through. The Afghan security forces may not have your name, and then the chances of the Marines out there spotting you because you're wearing the right type of clothing, there's just hundreds of people who who could come in, but they just aren't able to do it. So what's been happening is that these teams have been going out and rescuing people from rallying points around the city. So they'll get clusters of people to show up in, say, a hotel or in a safe house, and they'll be picked up there. But this is really just the sort of lucky minority of people, because there's still hundreds of people from all sorts of different organizations with valid documents who are unable to get through.
And how are these operations being conducted? I mean, there's helicopters being flown into, makeshift landing zones. One of them was at the Baron Hotel, which is where we suspect that one of these bombings happened.
I've been to the Baron Hotel many times, and I was living in Afghanistan for more than 4 years. It's not very far from the airport, and so you could see how a helicopter would fly over there. It's not too far away. It's got plenty of space. It's quite heavily secured. It's not the first time that's been bombed, so if the bombing happened, that's still to be confirmed. The more interesting cases of these rescues are people going out, people with the CIA or with the US military going out in local clothes and trying to sort of pass for locals to be able to get people inside the airport. And those are happening from rallying points that are further away from the Baron Hotel. One of the problems that they have with flying helicopters over the city is that there's a risk of them getting shot down, and if they do, then they don't want a Black Hawk Down scenario where they then have to rescue U.S. service members in the middle of the city. So they're very, very cautious with flying overhead.
As I mentioned at the beginning, you wrote a book called Eagle Down, The Last Special Forces Fighting the Forever War. You were in Afghanistan talking to these Special Forces soldiers who were really kind of the last bastion there as all of this drawdown was starting to begin. What did you learn from those forces, and if you have had any contact with them since all of this has been happening? How do they feel about the situation unfolding right now?
Sure. I mean, I keep in close contact with a lot of the guys that were part of the book, and unfortunately, to any soldier that has deployed to Afghanistan with the special operations community in recent years, none of what has happened is surprising. The book explains how since about 2015, the U.S. Special Operations has been keeping the Taliban from capturing major cities and important territory, and so the removal of those special operations forces is what caused the rest of the Afghan army to collapse, because until then they were depending on the special forces to come into cities, help the Afghan commandos, call in airstrikes, get intelligence support, logistics support, all sorts of things that you need to keep an army running over the Afghan terrain. And so pulling them out very swiftly caused the country to collapse, and many of them are very angry about what has happened, especially I think with the way that the drawdown has been handled, because it was predictable and this chaotic, really desperate scene at the airport could have been avoided.
When the Taliban moved in, I mean, they moved in pretty quickly, and Afghan forces seemingly just gave up. In your contact with the special forces, that you worked with through the book and all, did they feel that same way, that, the Afghan forces were just going to fold, without their presence there?
It's a very complicated theme. I mean, on one hand, Afghan soldiers and police have been dying in far higher numbers than the US. If you think about the number of casualties the US has had in 20 years, about deaths, it's around 2,500, and Afghans suffer 2 or 3 times as many casualties every year. So I think what you're hearing from the Biden administration that the army didn't want to fight, that's really not accurate. What is the problem is that this army has been led by very poor, corrupt leadership, often propped up by the U.S., and they're missing basic logistical supplies. The U.S. withdrawal also removed the support that kept their vehicles running, their air force flying. So without all of these things, it's very difficult for soldiers to hold out in isolated places where they would be surrounded by Taliban and they would run out of supplies. Many of them had no choice to fight, and when it comes to choosing to fight, what are you fighting for if your leadership is so corrupt they don't even give you money for food or uniforms?
Security there now is of paramount importance and continuing extraction of Americans. So it seems like we're still in for a chaotic weekend. Jessica Donati, reporter at the Wall Street Journal and author of Eagle Down, The Last Special Forces Fighting the Forever War. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
On Monday, we found out that the FDA finally granted full approval to the COVID-19 vaccine made by Pfizer. With this approval, the hope is that some hesitant people might get their shots, but also that more businesses and local governments might start mandating them. For more on what to know, we'll speak to Andrew Joseph, reporter at Stat News.
I think one of the concerns that some people raised about the vaccines is it didn't have full FDA approval, and so I think that maybe to them meant like it didn't have the full, kicking of the tires that an FDA-approved product would. So this could help, reassure some individuals, but perhaps more powerfully, I think you might actually start seeing more companies and agencies institute vaccine mandates with a full approval, because now they can kind of point to this as like the final straw that they needed to institute a mandate. And already today you're seeing that, like a couple local agencies in New York and New Jersey, the military came out and said with this FDA approval they're going to require COVID-19 vaccines. So that's probably the bigger implication,
right,
and just in terms of numbers of people.
Yeah, I think it was San Francisco had already passed it, basically saying we're waiting for the full approval, and then boom, you're going to have to be, the mandates are going to start coming there. So yeah, so that's kind of the biggest implication we're seeing out there. And just to anecdotally, just to share this, I work at a radio station as well. One of the morning shows did kind of this informal poll. Let's hear from listeners talking about, will you get the vaccine now that it's been fully approved? Not many people said yes. You know what I mean? So I don't know how much it's going to move the needle on that front. But, obviously that is the big hope. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the process that goes into it, because even the full approval was fast-tracked. And I don't want people to get scared away from it. Pfizer had to submit so much data to be considered for it to be fully approved, that they sent in some 340,000 pages for their approval application. I mean, there was a lot of data that went into it.
Yeah, I mean, and the FDA was obviously hurrying because of the importance of this in this emergency, but in terms of what they did to expedite it, it was more just putting more reviewers on, or it wasn't like they cut corners or didn't go through their processes, right, or anything like that. And some people were kind of wondering why is the FDA taking so long in general to get full approval, and they basically kind of had, just this is how the process goes, they had to wait for an additional 6 months of safety data. And so that, like you said, the EUA for Pfizer's vaccine, the first one in the United States, came in December, and so they had to wait, 6 months for data, and then, a couple months to collect and analyze and review it and make sure everything looked good. So they were, moving expeditiously, but they were also, there were sort of benchmarks that they had to hit, including that 6 months of additional safety data, and so that's why the approval came when it did.
You're listening to the Daily Dive Weekend Edition on KFI AM 640 and everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation about full FDA approval for Pfizer's vaccine.
Another mortgage tip from Owning. Have you refinanced in the last couple of years and would like to take advantage of today's lower rate, but you don't want to start your mortgage clock all over again? Problem solved. Owning's roll-down program offers you a new loan at today's low interest rates with no closing costs and simply rolls the remaining term down for qualified borrowers. For example, say you have a 3.25% mortgage with 27 years left. Today, Owning will roll your balance and term down to a 27-year loan with a 2.625% APR. The result? A lower payment with the same number of payments left. So roll it down with owning. No balance or term increase, just a payment decrease. That's a great mortgage tip. Call 8332-OWNING to roll down your mortgage payment.
NMLS 2611, licensed by the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation under the California Residential Mortgage Lending Act. Subject to credit approval. Call 833-852-6464 for terms and conditions. Equal housing lender.
That's 8332-OWNING or owning.com.
We've got you covered, America. Go solar American style with Semper Solaris, and we'll cover your electric bill. Semper Solaris is your local veteran-owned solar and battery storage contractor. Add Tesla Powerwall and be ready for blackouts. We get the job done with esprit de corps and honor. Semper Solaris offers new AC systems with a lifetime warranty and new roofs with a 50-year warranty. We hire vets and give back to the community with our Semper Cares initiative. Go solar American style with Semper Solaris, and we'll cover your electric bill. 0 down, 0 interest, and 0 payments until 2023. Get the federal 26% solar and battery tax credit. $500 off for military, first responders, and healthcare workers. Call 877-211-5591 or visit SemperSolaris.com.
With minimum purchase of 10 panels, up to $500 paid toward electric bill. Cannot be combined with any other offers. Some restrictions apply. Call or see website for details. Expires 8/31/2021. CSLB number 978152.
Rates subject to change without notice. Minimum loan amount requirements apply. 60% loan to value and 740 FICO credit score. Certain restrictions apply. Subject to credit approval. NMLS 3290. Loans made or arranged pursuant to a California Finance Lenders Law license number 6036970. Equal housing lender.
Unbelievable. Home loan rates have dropped again at IntelliLoan. Today, IntelliLoan is offering a 1.875% rate in the APR with no points and no lender fees. Did you hear that? A 1.875%. Don't think you qualify? I bet you haven't called IntelliLoan. You don't have to have perfect credit to get this great home loan. So lock in this unbelievably low 1.875% fixed rate in APR with no points and no lender fees. So call IntelliLoan before the rates go up. Call them at 1-800-918-6200. That's 1-800-918-6200. Or just go to IntelliLoan.com.
IntelliLoan. Borrow smart.
Yes, I know. I have a calming demeanor. You know, when it's your job basically to push people beyond their comfort zones, it's good to make them feel as safe as possible. Like an open heart surgeon for your home. You'll do fine. No worries. We got it.
Home with Dean Sharp, the House Whisperer, this morning at 9 on KFI AM 640.
More stimulating talk.
This is KFI AM 640. I'm Oscar Ramirez, and you're listening to the Daily Dive Weekend Edition. Who is covered in this full authorization? Because I know 12 to 15-year-olds are still under emergency use authorization.
Right.
What's the breakdown on?
Yeah, so the full approval goes for people 16 and up. And again, that's just because that's the group that was under the original EUA, and so that's why the FDA now has 6 months of additional safety data on that group. The EUA for the Pfizer vaccine for 12 to 15-year-olds came later, so there hasn't been that 6 month follow-up yet. So that's why there's this difference where the 12 to 15-year-olds are still under EUA for the Pfizer vaccine, whereas 16 and above are part of this full approval.
Now, obviously, the FDA is giving full approval for all of this, but they did say that there were some risks associated with it, some risks of 2 types of heart inflammation that mostly affected younger men.
They're called myocarditis and pericarditis, and they're basically inflammation of different parts of the heart and the area around the heart. And health officials have been seeing this with both the mRNA vaccines for the past couple months, like initially in Israel, where they rolled out vaccines really quickly, and then subsequently in other countries as well, including in the U.S. And so this has been on the radar for a while, and actually, I can't remember, it was maybe a month or two ago, they added the risk of myocarditis and pericarditis to the sort of information prescribers get for who give out vaccines, and also people get when they receive their vaccines for both Pfizer and Moderna. But like you said, so far it appears to be most common within about a week of people's second shots, because these are 2-dose regimens, and the risk is highest for men under 40 compared to older men or women overall. And then it's the risk is the highest risk is among 12 to 17-year-olds. And I should be clear that there's a risk, and they've seen this, and it appears to be a rare side effect, but it's very rare, and most cases appear to have been mild and sort of resolved on their own. And what experts would also tell you is that myocarditis and pericarditis, there are a lot of different causes, but a common one is a viral infection, and the rates of both appear to be much higher after a COVID-19 infection than from these vaccines.
What's next then for all the vaccines? We're still waiting for Moderna to get their full approval. That'll take a little bit of time. And then beyond that, even for Pfizer, the next step for them is more data on younger kids, right? So that they can get the full authorizations there.
The big question really seems to be when the vaccines are going to be authorized for kids under 12. And that's obviously very pressing with school starting. What the FDA said is that they're just still waiting on clinical trial data from, these trials aren't going, so they have to wait for the companies to gather data and then submit them to the agency for review. And so they can't put a certain time frame on when they're going to authorize this. And what they really specify is that they need these studies to be done in kids because kids are different. They're, as Janet Woodcock, the acting commissioner of the FDA, said today, they're not just small adults. So they want to make sure they have the same, they want to make sure they understand the safety profile in kids. And they also want to make sure they have a correct dose to see if they can use a smaller dose in kids, for example.
Andrew Joseph, reporter at Stat News. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Following that FDA approval for Pfizer, we saw Delta Airlines up its game in the vaccine pressure campaign. Stopping short of a mandate, they said that unvaccinated employees will have their health insurance premiums increased by $200 a month, citing the high cost of treating employees who have been hospitalized, averaging out to $50,000 per person. For more on this, we'll speak to Leslie Josephs, airline reporter at CNBC.
So this is kind of unusual amongst airlines and even amongst big U.S. corporations. It is something that HR consultants say that we could see more of soon. Delta, the CEO, said today that it costs the company $50,000 when an employee is hospitalized. This is a self-funded insurance program that Delta has. So starting November 1st, they're saying that unvaccinated workers are going to have to pay $200 more in their health insurance premiums. So it's a pretty big monthly charge for people who are unvaccinated. There are also other measures that Delta announced today. They're immediate masking. If you are unvaccinated at any indoor Delta space, headquarters or otherwise, and you're going to have to start in September taking regular COVID tests weekly if you are unvaccinated. And then also if you catch COVID and you're not vaccinated, starting late September, you're going to have to use your sick days for that, whereas before Delta was pay protecting everybody.
Yeah, that's an interesting one right there. My company as well, iHeartMedia, offers some of that pay protection as well. You get COVID, you don't have to use sick days. There's special sick supplemental pay set aside for that. But that's an interesting one too. Like I said, part of the pressure campaign almost, because they're stopping pretty short of a mandate, but everything is pushing you into that. So yeah, you have to start using your own personal sick days at that point. And you did notice in the article, this was a change in approach by Delta, not by United Healthcare, who runs their health insurance plan.
That's right, yeah. This is a Delta initiative, and like you mentioned, Delta did stop short of this mandate, and we've seen this in other companies too. It's kind of like, do you use the carrot or the stick? And Delta has been offering, extra pay or time off, and we see that at American Airlines as well. But now they're kind of putting the cost onto the employee to urge as many people as possible to be vaccinated. And we should know that Delta has about 75,000 employees. CEO Ed Bastian saying today about 3/4 of them are vaccinated. So they want to get to 100%. This is an industry that is so dependent on this virus going away, or at least cases falling, so that business travel comes back. We see leisure travel at the levels we were at in 2019, and their financial security pretty much depends on it.
Yeah, that 75% though is actually a pretty good vaccination rate there. So yeah, just need to get over, just a little bit more. What else does the landscape look like with the airlines? Who is mandating stuff? Who's going kind of this Delta route?
Yeah, we are seeing a split amongst airlines. United Airlines was the first one to come out earlier this month and mandate vaccines for its entire U.S. workforce, about 68,000 people. And the way that's going to work is the way they set it up was 5 weeks after the FDA give full approval to one of the vaccines, which of course they did this week with the Pfizer vaccine. So that puts it at September 27th. And it's a very strict mandate. They say you could face termination if you don't get this vaccine. There are exceptions for religious and medical reasons, but it is an extremely strict mandate. We have seen Hawaiian Airlines also is going to be mandating vaccines. Alaska Airlines is thinking about it, and they told employees that earlier this month, and they said it would only happen after the FDA made the step that it took on Monday, giving full approval to one of the vaccines. And Frontier Airlines kind of is in the middle. They are saying that you have to get vaccinated, and if you don't, if you choose to, so you can still elect whether to get it or not, you will have to have a regular COVID test. We have not seen American Airlines, which is offering, extra pay or time off for employees to get vaccinated, extra vacation day next year, for example, or Southwest. And we have heard from a lot of pilot unions, including at Delta, that they want to keep it voluntary. So I think airlines are also weighing what are the reactions going to be from some of our critical employees.
Yeah, and that was my next question. So we've seen pushback from the pilots union. Have we seen it in other areas, or has it been kind of relegated to that for the most part?
We have heard it from one of the unions at United, the IAM that represents the ramp and customer service workers. They had told us last week that there is some hesitance amongst some of their members to get vaccinated. Some have threatened to quit. Time will tell if this happens on September 27th by the time of the deadline. But the union also told us United is within their legal rights, and there isn't really a legal challenge that they could mount to this, even though some of the members might be asking them to sue the companies. So their hands are tied in that regard.
Well, this is all a push to, obviously for Delta not to spend so much money if their employees do get hospitalized, but also to keep everybody healthier and safe, even for the passengers themselves. They've extended that mask wearing deadline. It was supposed to expire in September. How long did they extend it to now?
So the TSA, or the Biden administration as a whole, really has extended that mask mandate. September 14th was going to be when it was listed, and now it's going to be the middle of January. I believe it's the 18th of January. So we're going to, if you're flying during the holidays, you're going to have to wear a mask on a plane. And that's not much of a surprise. And just looking at the case numbers of COVID, so it doesn't look like that's something that's going to be listed. But the airlines, they want their employees to be vaccinated so that when demand continues to pick up, they don't have staffing shortages. I mean, those are things that we've seen over the summer. So it's, add staffing shortages, add to that the potential for your workers to get severe COVID. That's a worry amongst executives for sure.
Leslie Josephs, airline reporter at CNBC. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
You're listening to the Daily Dive Weekend Edition on KFI AM 640 and everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. I'll be back with some more top stories from the week, but first, let's get an update from the KFI newsroom.
KFI News on the hour, on the half, and when it breaks.
I'm Brian Bruman from the KFI 24-hour newsroom. A 29-year-old man has been arrested after he allegedly tried to strangle a police canine. Glendale police say the guy, who had multiple warrants for his arrest, tried to strangle the dog after he ran into a house to get away from cops Tuesday afternoon. Cops tased him to get him off the dog and arrested him. The dog, named Coda, is expected to fully recover. The FBI says federal agencies are on high alert for terror attacks against the U.S. because of the violence and chaos in Afghanistan. Officials say there hasn't been any specific intelligence about any terrorist organization in particular, but people associated with ISIS or Al-Qaeda could use the evacuation mission to enter the U.S. The FBI says it's also concerned about white supremacists and other domestic terrorists who may be inspired by the recent violence. SoCal weather from KFI. There's a heat advisory in the Inland Empire until tonight at 9, highs in the low to upper 100s. There's also a heat advisory in the San Fernando and Santa Clarita valleys until tonight, mid-90s to mid-100s in the inland valleys. We lead local from the KFI 24-hour newsroom. I'm Brian Bruman.
Checking KFI traffic, we do have a full closure in Laguna Hills on the 5 northbound between Alicia Parkway and El Toro Road, and a crash through Lakeview Terrace on the 210 eastbound before Osborne Street. That's blocking the 3 left lanes. Traffic is backed up to the 118. Also affecting traffic on the westbound side of the 210 in Osborne, where the 2 left lanes are blocked. KFI in the Sky helps get you there faster. I'm Jonathan Weiss.
Discover matches all the cash back you earn on your credit card at the end of your first year. It's amazing because Discover is accepted at 99% of places in the U.S. that take credit cards. Learn more at discover.com/yes. 2021 Nielsen Report limitations apply.
Contractor license 1047-781.
In the air conditioner marathon, you run till you drop. You can't fix it by just unplugging it and plugging it in again. Your AC is working its heart out for you. Your AC needs some TLC, tender love and care. It needs a ghetto rejuvenation. Rejuvenation. We're going to bring that air conditioner back to life. Ghetto will bring 6 critical systems back to factory specs and wash those outside coals, the the right way, not the easy way. Your home will feel cooler, but your AC will be working a lot less hard and using a lot less energy. It only costs $129. What only costs $129? Rejuvenation. Rejuvenation. If your rejuvenated system breaks down before the end of the year, I'm going to give you $500 off a new 5-star system. Get it. QE We'll keep you cool, but it's hard to spell.
Are you ready for fall, but your house isn't? Luckily, Lowe's has what you need and the prices you want to get your front yard, backyard, every yard ready to host this season. Gardening and grilling and leaf blowing starts at Lowe's.
Well hit on its way, the Grand Slam for Corey Seager.
The 2020 season was a memorable one for World Series MVP Corey Seager.
By far his biggest hit of the year.
Now Dodger fans can relive Corey's incredible postseason run by taking home his MVP bobblehead. Be here on Wednesday, September 1st when the Dodgers face the Braves, and the first 40,000 fans in attendance will receive a Corey Seager World Series MVP bobblehead presented by Budweiser. For tickets, visit Dodgers.com/promotions.
Alzheimer's disease is a national crisis. More than 6 million Americans are living with the diagnosis. Alzheimer's Los Angeles provides people living with the disease and their caregivers free support and services to make their life a little easier. Learn more at alzheimersla.org.
KFI, live and everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
KFI, AM 640, more stimulating talk.
KFI,
Live and local.
an iHeartRadio station.
This is KFI AM 640, heard everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. I'm Oscar Ramirez, and you're listening to the Daily Dive Weekend Edition. This week, we also saw a very interesting lawsuit pop up. One of the most recognizable album covers in music is the subject of this new lawsuit alleging it constituted child pornography. Spencer Eldon is suing over Nirvana's Nevermind album cover, in which he is pictured as a naked baby 30 years ago. For more on this lawsuit, we'll speak to Chris Willman, features editor at Variety.
The infant in question is now 30, just like the Nevermind album, obviously, because he was 4 months old when the cover was shot, and I think the cover was shot just about 2 months before the album came out, so it was fairly last minute as things go. And, you know, his father, the baby's father, was friends with the photographer and they had some kind of vague instructions about shooting the baby underwater. And at the time, 1991, it was like, come to the aquatic center, the Rose Bowl, and for $200, throw your baby in the water. And, you know, it's in question, you know, how much they knew about what it was going to be used for. But in interviews in the past, the baby, who's now a young man, Spencer Eldon, has said that they didn't really know, his parents didn't really know what it was going to be used for, how essentially it was going to be used until they drove by Tower Records on Sunset and saw this huge blow-up of the photo shoot.
Right.
And for that, they got $200 and a teddy bear and the platinum record, when the record went platinum, and that was it. So the young man in question has had 30 years to sort of deal with this, and he's been ambivalent over the years. He's participated in many interviews and photo shoots where he, as an adult or a teenager, he recreated the album cover, albeit wearing swim trunks and not naked like the baby on the cover. So it seemed like he was enjoying his fame.
Yeah, he did it for at least 4 album cover anniversaries. So there's a number of times he did recreate it.
And he even got Nevermind tattooed on his chest. So there was a level of enjoyment amid the ambivalence, it would seem like. But now, all of a sudden, kind of out of the blue, for the 30th anniversary, we have this lawsuit where he is alleging that it was child pornography, which not a lot of people saw coming. You know, you might have expected, hey, we're suing because we didn't sign a release, which is something they also contend, or we deserve more payment out for 30 million albums sold than $200. That's not the way they're going. They're going with the child porn ethic.
That's exactly what I was talking to other people about when this story came out today. It was like, I can totally understand somebody saying, I'm going to file a lawsuit to get damages back for this. We didn't sign the release of that photo. Let's go down this legal route to see what we can get back. That's totally understandable, and we've seen it in other different cases. But to go this child pornography route is so odd to me. They say that because they have the fish hook with the dollar on there and the baby's like swimming towards it, it makes them look like a sex worker. You know, some of the stuff that's in the lawsuit, if you can help elaborate on that, is pretty crazy, it seems like.
I mean, I just have spoken with the legal team for the young man, and they're a legal team that specializes in child pornography cases. So that may help explain why that is their main angle here and not you didn't sign a release. That's what they do. They do child pornography lawsuits. And so that's what they're hitting with heavy. And
it makes sense when you read certain passages from the lawsuit. You know, the way they write it is geared very specifically to that angle.
Having talked to one of the lawyers on the case, she's very passionate about this. This is something she considers part of what she deals with all the time in terms of child exploitation. And while the rest of us may go, oh, where'd that come from? This is like, well, of course, for them, it's child pornography. So the reaction I'm seeing, they're on offense, may be biased, but it seems like not a lot of people over the last 30 years have been saying, oh, this is obviously child porn. Now, you look up online and you will see Reddit groups everywhere going, is that legal? To show a baby's penis? And then the answer will be, well, yeah, actually it is if it's non-sexualized. So, of course, with this lawsuit, they're taking the position that it's totally sexualized. But that would seem to be in the eye of a beholder, and I would say not a plurality of beholders have thought that way until now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, on that front too, right? The part of the story goes is that they said maybe at the time we'll put a sticker over Spencer's little Spencer there, but Kurt Cobain insisted, saying that if we put a sticker there, it would basically say if you were offended by this, you must be a closet pedophile. So I mean, even back then it seemed like they were thinking about that maybe, but I just feel like a lot of people would look at that and not feel that it was a sexualized photo. Who knows? I guess that's up to a judge, right?
Yeah, or a jury. They want a jury trial on this. And I asked the lawyer, I said, are you going to appeal to sort of the plurality opinion out there? Because I would say that, not most people historically so far have not considered this child porn, and she was like, that doesn't matter, what the jurors think after we presented our case is what matters. So she's convinced that 12 people will see this as child porn, whether they came into it to be innocent or not.
Chris Wilman, features editor of Variety. Thank you very much for joining us.
You bet, I'll be.
The recall election of California Governor Gavin Newsom is also underway right now, with the deadline of September 14th for mail-in ballots. Recent polls have shown that the recall is closer to passing than Democrats would like, and a lot of it comes down to voter enthusiasm. Without Trump as a foil, are enough Democrats paying attention and energized to vote to defeat that recall? For more on all this, we'll speak to David Siders, national political correspondent at Politico.
If it was a normal election, if this was a normal year in November, maybe even last year, like a normal time frame with candidates and issues on the ballot, this wouldn't be a problem at all in California for Democrats, right? They have a huge registration advantage, Republicans are less than a quarter of the electorate, and the governor would fail. But because this is this unusual ballot, as you pointed out, with two questions propositions, the polling indicates that Republicans are far more amped up about this election than Democrats are. So it would still take a huge imbalance of Republicans to Democrats